Kept you waiting, huh?
What the fuck is this program, man? Sequels exist because stories are never truly finished. In theory, a second chapter isn't just about continuing the narrative, it's about justifying its own existence. A sequel has to build on the foundation laid by the first story, deepen its themes, and prove that what came before wasn't the end, but the beginning. Sometimes that works. Sometimes a sequel takes everything that made the original compelling and expands on it, becoming just as good, if not better. And other times, it exists purely to cash in on success, mistaking continuation for purpose. So the question isn't whether a story continues, it's why it continues. The Golden Kamuy film ends not with a bang, but a whimper. The closing image of Asuba and Sugimoto standing quietly against the vast Hokkaido landscape doesn't offer resolution. Instead, it leaves us restless, hungry, aware that this story isn't finished, it's only just begun. And honestly, that feeling is rare. The last time I remember feeling this very strongly was when I saw The Fellowship of the Ring in the cinemas at 11 years old. Frodo and Sam standing at the edge of the mountain, Mount Doom looming in the distance, a final shot that didn't promise closure, but commitment. A silent agreement with the audience that the journey ahead would be longer, harder, meaningful, but also that much more dangerous. That's the space Golden Kamuy chooses to end in, and that's why its continuation matters. In the end credit sequence of the film, we see snapshots of the characters yet to come, characters we would be seeing in the follow-up series, The Hunt of Prisoners in Hokkaido. Some friend, some enemy, and some in between. In the world of storytelling, format matters just as much as intent. The way a story is told can elevate it, or quietly work against it. And when you're dealing with something as dense, sprawling, and deliberately chaotic as Golden Kamuy, that difference becomes impossible to ignore. Film, by its very nature, compresses. With Golden Kamuy spanning 31 manga volumes, any live-action film adaptation is immediately forced to make very hard decisions. What stays, what goes, and what simply can't fit. Even knowing that the film tells a relatively self-contained narrative, pulling primarily from volumes 1 and 2, with a dash of 4 for good measure, there's only so much story that can survive the cut. And to its credit, the film does exactly what it needs to do. It successfully sets up the core premise, the central cast of characters, the tone and its expectations, and the harsh, snow-covered world this story inhabits. Hinna. But compression comes at a cost. A 2-hour runtime doesn't just limit plot, it limits the texture. It restricts how long a moment can breathe, how deeply an idea can be explored, and how much time we're allowed to simply exist with these characters. A film moves forward. A series allows you to sit still. Where the film is forced to streamline, the television series opens everything back up. A series gives Golden Kamuy the space to expand plot threads instead of rushing past them, deepen the character relationships and rivalries, linger on the rituals that define the cast, and yes, fully indulge in those incredible Ainu dishes. Brains included. Get it down, you duck. I love being from Nottingham. These moments aren't filler, they're foundational. The way characters eat together, the way that they argue, the way ideology clashes not through grand speeches, but through repeated, uncomfortable encounters. In a film, an ideological standoff might be reduced to a single sharp line of dialogue. In a series, it becomes a pattern. something that evolves, mutates, and gains weight over time. This is where the difference becomes most important. Films are built around escalation. Everything pushes towards a single, decisive climax. Characters exist in service of that momentum. Television works differently. Episodic storytelling thrives on interruption rather than resolution, shifting the focus rather than linear escalation. Tension that resets, reframes, and compounds. And Golden Kamuy is fundamentally an episodic story. The prisoner hunt doesn't function as a straight line. Every encounter reshapes the narrative. Every new character tilts the balance of power. Alliances form, fracture, and reform again. Not for spectacle, but for survival. There is no singular antagonist driving the story forward. There are many, all pulling in different directions. That kind of narrative chaos doesn't want a cinematic finish. It wants time. Ultimately, the film exists to answer one crucial question. Can Golden Kamuy work in live action? Spoiler alert, yes it can. But the series is where the real work begins. If the film is the answer, then the series is the part of the exam that says, show you're working in the space below. And Golden Kamuy has a lot to throw at you just to prove that point. The film of Golden Kamuy keeps its focus relatively tight. It centres primarily on Sugimoto, Asapo, and Shiraishi, establishing their personalities, dynamics, and basic character arcs. Alongside them, we're introduced to Lieutenant Tsurumi, his motivations for finding the gold, as well as Hijikata and Ushiyama forming the third major faction, forming a clear triangle of power all competing for the tattooed skins. It works. It has to. But the series gets to open the box. I touched briefly on Tsurumi and Hijikata in part 1, but here the format finally allows them to become what they truly are. In the series, Tsurumi is colder, more calculating, and frankly, far more terrifying. We see the lengths he's willing to go in pursuit of the treasure. Not just strategically, but psychologically. He manipulates, intimidates, and dismantles the people around him with frightening ease. And yet, what makes him so dangerous is that he remains charming, charismatic, almost warm. It's like a switch flipping. One moment he's inspirational, the next he's utterly ruthless, and you're never quite sure which version you're going to get. That unpredictability is what makes him such a compelling antagonist. Also, I think this is just probably one of my favourite Tsurumi moments. I don't know why, just enjoy it. Hijikata, on the other hand, represents something entirely different. Based on the real-life Toshizo Hijikata, vice commander of the Shinsengumi, who died at the Battle of Hakodate, his presence in Golden Kamuy feels almost anachronistic. His death marked the end of the Shinsengumi, and symbolically, the end of an era. In the series, Hijikata is a man who refuses to move on. He lives by the old ways, clings to honour, tradition, and experience, and quietly resists the modern world forming around him. He's calm, knowledgeable, wise. But push him too far, and
they'll kill you 5 times before you hit the ground.
Yeah, that. The same chaotic energy applies to Ushiyama the Undefeated, our resident judo champion. His introduction in the film, being approached by Hijikata in a brothel, is already memorable, but the series fully commits to how absurdly dangerous he is. And yes, I left this out last time. I'm not doing that again. Perfection. He later reappears during the robbery, and then again in the series when Shirashi overhears a conversation that leads to... This moment sets the tone of the show perfectly. I mean, you've gotta love it. Beyond the core factions, the series finally gives space to characters who were only lightly touched on in the film. We see much more of Tanigaki and Ogata, both of whom benefit massively from extended screen time. Nikaido's quest for revenge against Sugimoto after his own brother's death becomes a driving force rather than a footnote. Alongside Tsurumi, we also get Tsukishima, his loyal right-hand man, grounding Tsurumi's madness with rigid discipline. And in the final episode, we're introduced to Otonoshin Koito, a young, energetic second lieutenant in the 7th Division. He's talented, hot-headed, and utterly devoted to Tsurumi. His blind admiration adds yet another volatile ingredient to an already unstable mix. Sugimoto's side of the story also grows. The first major addition is Kiroranke, an Ainu villager from another settlement who knew Asapa's father, and therefore knows Asapa herself. His character is possibly inspired by Russian revolutionaries Nikolai Ryazkov and Andrei Shelobov. I don't think I've said that right. Either way, they're figures involved in the assassination of Tsar Alexander II in 1881. That connection makes sense. Kiroranke is Russian, and he travelled to Japan alongside Wilk. Also, in chapter 160 of the manga, Tsurumi tells about the people responsible for the assassination in 1881, placing Kiroranke as a suspect of the incident as well, plus another character. I don't want to spoil it for the people who haven't seen the anime or read the manga, but, you know, I just had to add that in. He's played by Hiroyuki Ikeuchi, who you might recognise from Alice in Borderland, Ip Man, or Railroad Tigers with Jackie Chan. Yeah, it is a good film. His performance is calm, restrained, and quietly observant, never interrupting scenes, but shaping them in subtle ways that fit Kiroranke perfectly. And once again, I can't stress this enough, the casting in Golden Kamuy is spot on. And then there's also Inkamat, an Ainu fortune teller who joins the group through Tanigaki's storyline. Her clairvoyance allows her to predict future events, and unsettlingly, she's almost always right. She's played by Jun Takahashi, and if you recognised her immediately, 10 points to Gryffindor. If not, she appeared in Sion Sono's Tag, which I will talk about someday. And for Rurouni Kenshin fans, she played Yumi in films 2 and 3. That girl, the one with the hots for Shishio. Now that I think about it, that should be the main cast. Let's see. Yeah, we're good. Which means it's finally time to talk about the most unhinged part of the story. Let's talk about those prisoners. Each episode revolves around one escaped convict from Abashiri Prison. Hunters, murderers, robbers, conmen, a collection of people shaped by desperation, cruelty, and survival instinct. And crucially, no two prisoners feel the same. It gives the hunt a rhythm, part mystery, part survival story, allowing each episode to explore a different flavour of violence, madness, and human behaviour under pressure. And that structure is doing far more work than it first appears. The opening episode is about establishing danger. The episode wastes absolutely no time making one thing clear. These prisoners are not disposable villains of the week. The prisoner of this episode being Tetsuzo Nihei, also known as the Bear Hunter. In this dude's mind, all that goes on is hunting, eating animals, and letting everyone know he has a Boki. Also, translate it for yourselves. I'm not getting this video demonetized. It's probably already is, but you never know. In this opening episode, we also learn a bit more about Tanigaki and his history. Episode 2 is where Golden Kamuy starts flexing its identity. The humour creeps in at deeply inappropriate moments. And suddenly, you find yourself laughing, then immediately questioning why. This episode highlights one of the series' greatest strengths, its refusal to separate comedy and brutality into neat boxes. It's also the episode where the tone is fully locked in. From here on out, you either accept Golden Kamuy on its terms, or you're getting left behind. The prisoner of episode 2 is Kazuo Henmei, a serial killer who really wants someone to game end him. Yeah, the dude is actually insane, wanting Sugimoto to literally just end his life, and ending up having wild fantasies about it, so yeah, whatever gets you going, I guess. Episode 3 does something a little bit different as opposed to just hunting for the prisoners. That takes a backseat to focus on Tanigaki's story after being looked after in Asaper's village. This is also where the stakes are raised, as Ogata and Nikaido are looking for him after leaving the 7th Division. There's a great power dynamic at play with some amazing camera work and editing, especially in the standoff scenes, mirroring how the look and feel is in the manga. This episode is also where Tsurumi goes into all-out Terrifier mode. Episode 4 is Kano Inega, the owner of the World Hotel. She's literally a cannibal, eating her victims, believing eating them will grant her eternal youth. It just happened to be where Sugi's group and Ushiyama are also staying. When they meet together in the lobby, possibly the most alpha thing takes place. Actually no, not alpha, it's more sigma. It's like that scene in Fullmetal Alchemist with Major Armstrong and Sig where they flex off.
The muscles did the talking for them.
Same energy in Golden Kamuy, difference being they fight later in the episode. And it's so good. Also, it's the episode where we get Asaper calling Ushiyama Professor Penis.
Boku no chinchin chisai desu.
What a time to be alive. I have to admit, this is possibly my favourite episode in the series. I like the framing of the scenes and how it's shot. At moments, it looks like a Japanese version of a Wes Anderson film. Plus, it's the only time you'll see Sugimoto roundhouse someone. So satisfying. Episode 5 is where the group find out about another convict, which is a Yakuza boss, Wakayama. Now this one is a little bit different. Due to him being a Yakuza, his body will already be covered in a tattoo. So, his legs are covered instead.
Oh my.
Also, this episode has more beers! Okay, episode 6 is where the weird and horrifying stuff begins. It makes episode 4 look like the Magic Roundabout, focusing mainly on Tsurumi and Idaigo, a taxidermist who makes very unsettling pieces of fashion. Think Ed Gein mixed with Norman Bates, especially as he speaks with the taxidermy mother who sits at the dinner table speaking to him in his head. It's not hard to see the influence of American films in Noda's work, like Psycho, especially when we also get an Indiana Jones style minecart chase. And also, they don't include this in the series, but in the manga, when we find out a bit more about Shiraishi's past and how he became the Escape King, there's literally a nod to Shawshank Redemption. Episode 7 is another formula breaker, as it lets the characters interact and realise they need to work together to get these skins, and move on to Abashiri Prison to speak with Noporobo. And when I read the dinner scene in the manga and saw the recreation of The Last Supper by Da Vinci, I didn't expect them to do it in the series, but they did. I love this series. I love it so much. Episode 8 is back to the prisoner hunt, as an Ainu village gets taken over by Yakuza and another epic fight scene happens. They were looking for the counterfeiter to help distinguish which skins are fake and legit, as Tsurumi had Idaigo create fake skins to throw the other group off the hunt. But also, Shiraishi is taken and ends with the plans to get him back. Episode 9 is the ultimate payoff, getting Shiraishi back from the clutches of the 7th Division using the power of dead ringer conman Suzukawa. The stakes are raised with the introduction of Koito, and I'm going to be honest, I love Koito. If you've read the manga or watched the anime, you'll see just how badass he actually is. I really can't wait to see how he is in Assault on Abashiri Prison. You know he's just going to go absolutely beast mode. Fatality. But other than that, by the time episode 9 rolls its credits, the prisoner hunt has done its job. Not by giving us closure, but by revealing what kind of people these characters are when everything is stripped back to instinct, belief and survival. The prisoners weren't ever the destination, they were the fuse, and now the fuse has burned all the way down. Because this story was never really about finding gold, it was about what people are willing to become in pursuit of it. And with the series ending the way it doesn't feel like we've reached the end of something. It feels like we've arrived at the point where Golden Kamuy says, okay, now the real hunt begins. Which brings us neatly to what happens next, and why the next live action film has a lot riding on it. The series covers volumes 3 through 9 of the manga, and what I love about that stretch of Golden Kamuy is how confidently it opens the world up. New characters step in, new alliances form, old wounds resurface, and yet, through all of it, the story never loses sight of its core. There isn't a single moment that feels like filler, not a single scene that drags, not a single episode where I found myself checking the time wondering if I should keep watching. And that's not an accident, because this is a story still guided by its creator. With Noda himself writing the screenplays, the series doesn't feel like an adaptation trying to translate Golden Kamuy. It feels like Golden Kamuy simply changing its clothes. Same soul, same bite, same madness, just now played out in flesh and blood. What makes Golden Kamuy stand apart from so many long-running series is that it doesn't operate in neat, comfortable arcs. You don't get clean resets. You don't get tidy endings that let you breathe before the next chapter begins. This story doesn't pause. It moves forward, relentlessly. Which is why the next chapter, Assault on Abashiri Prison, doesn't feel like just another sequel. It feels like destiny. Because this isn't a casual continuation. This is where everything starts to collide. The rival factions, the ideologies, the grudges that have been simmering since the very beginning, the plans that have been formerly quiet in the background. If the film lit the fuse and the series let it burn, then Assault on Abashiri Prison is where the explosion finally happens. And if you've read the manga, you already know, this is where Golden Kamuy stops being just an incredible adventure and fully becomes a moment, a turning point, the kind of chapter that defines everything that comes after it. But I won't go into spoilers, because for anyone who's only following the live action journey, if you've made it through the film and the series and you are yet still here, you're not just watching anymore, you're invested. And trust me, that investment is about to pay off in ways that make every gunfight, every betrayal, every insane prisoner encounter feel like it was all leading to this. You'll feel more rewarded than Luffy when he finally reaches Laugh Tale and finds the One Piece. But this isn't about pirates. This is about Golden Kamuy. And with Assault on Abashiri Prison on the horizon, it doesn't feel like we're approaching the end of the story. It feels like we're finally stepping into the chapter everything has been building towards. Golden Kamuy has never been a simple story about treasure. It just uses gold as the excuse. Because beneath the gunfire, the prison escapes, the betrayals, and the bear attacks, this has always been a story about people carrying the weight of history on their backs. Soldiers who can't go home, cultures fighting to survive, men chasing ideals that died years ago, and others trying to build something new in a world that keeps pulling them backwards. The live-action series understands that. It doesn't just adapt the plot, it adapts the spirit. It takes everything the film set in motion and lets it breathe. Lets the characters stretch, lets the madness spiral, and most importantly, it lets Golden Kamuy become what it was always meant to be in this format. Not just an adventure, but a slow-burning war of ideology, loyalty, and survival. And if the film asked the question, can Golden Kamuy work in live action, then the series answers it without hesitation. Not only does it work, it thrives. But what makes this even more exciting is that we're still only at the beginning. Because with the next Golden Kamuy film landing in March, this story isn't winding down, it's only just gearing up. The board is set, the players are in position, and the hunt has officially evolved into something far bigger than a race for gold. So if this series proves anything, it's this. Golden Kamuy in live action isn't just an adaptation, it's a commitment. And honestly, I can't wait to see where it goes next.